Hello, my name is Alex Morrissey. I'm with the Technical Marketing Engineering Group based out of the Extreme Network Salem, New Hampshire office. I'm joined today by Ken Jones, also with the PMA group here. And today we're going to talk about getting started in XIQ with our EXOS and VOSS operating systems. Now, the first thing I'd like to do is start quickly on how to onboard a switch into XIQ. In the nature of time here, so we can get lots of Q&A in, we pre-recorded this just to accelerate the onboarding time. Onboarding a switch from power up to connections usually takes a few minutes here. So through the magic of video editing, it's going to appear very quickly. So to start off, our XIQ supports many different products. The first most common is the Cloud AP. The APs will connect up to our XIQ up in the cloud using a CAP-web tunnel. The switches, both EXOS and VOSS, operate a little differently. On board each of these systems, we load an IQ agent. This IQ agent is included with our firmware that you download on the switch, but is also independently upgradable from the cloud. Now, the IQ agent also communicates to XIQ in a different manner. Instead of using the CAP-web tunnel, we communicate over an HTTPS connection up to your particular XIQ instance. And that IQ agent on the switch side will then collect specific information relating to the OS. So for EXOS, we'll do EXOS specific and VOSS specific. This information is collected through a variety of methods. We use the REST APIs on the switches. We use SNMP polling on the switches. We can also use this LEP to get neighbor informations. We also have the capability through the agent to SSH into the switches for direct CLI access. Now, onboarding a switch is a fairly simple process. For this demo, we're going to focus on an EXOS switch. So when you first power up the EXOS switch, if you plug it into your network where you can get a DHCP address and DNS information, it will communicate up to our XIQ servers up in the cloud to establish that initial connection. Now, in order to map the switch into your particular instance, you need to get the switch serial number, which you can get from a show version. Once you have the serial number of the switch, you can then go into your Manage Device window, select the plus sign here at the top, and quick add devices. Now, at this point, you can select what operating system your switch is running. If you're running a VOSS switch, then you want to select the EXOS menu here and choose VOSS. Once the correct OS is selected, we paste in our serial number and then select Add Device over on the right. Now, when a device is first added to the cloud, it's going to show up in a red icon, as we can see here, with the generic host name. Once the device does its initial check-in, we'll see that icon go green, and as more information is learned, the host name will update. Now, on the switch side, you can see the status of this connection. On EXOS, the command is show IQ agent, and this command will provide a few data points for you. The current connection state to our XIQ, which of our data centers the switch is connecting to. So in most of your XIQ instances, you'll notice on the URL be VA2 or a different name, IE or similar. The association URL within the command output here should match. It'll also give you the poll statuses over time. When looking at the XIQ side, we can also see some statistics learned from the switch. So by selecting the device, we can look at any current alarms, some general port information on port states. We look at events, some diagnostics, as well as what clients are connected and learned on the ports. Now, configuring the switch is done through our network policies. Now, network policies are a collection of device templates with common configuration. So if you're onboarding multiple switch models, here you would have multiple device templates. Each template is specific to that particular model switch, including the number of ports it might have and maybe different capabilities. So in this case, we have our X440G2. We configure different port settings using port templates. A port template is a collection of VLANs, whether it's an access or a trunk, what VLANs that may be. Also some port level settings, such as the LDP settings, some storm control, and we also now support spanning tree configuration, all from the network template. Now, if you need to apply some additional configuration beyond what's available in the network template, we have the option to apply direct CLI commands to your supplemental CLI. Now, the supplemental CLI can be defined in a few different places, and we're going to show different spots. Here, we're showing it configured at a global level across your entire XIQ. Now, in this case, we're doing the switch basics, so just a generic SNMP configuration and contact information that we'd like to push down by CLI. We've inputted the commands needed, so these are all EXOS commands. And then we save this template. Now, this is available to be used across all our device templates. So we go back into our X440 template here. We select supplemental CLI. We enable this functionality, and we can select our predefined global template. You also have the option here, if you want, to manually configure a new template right there, and it'll save for use elsewhere. Now, if you want to just apply that configuration to a specific device, maybe you're doing a unique corner case, it's the same in most ways except for one small piece. You can configure this right from the device window. So by going to the Configure tab, Device Configuration, we can select a supplemental CLI right from this window. Additionally, we can enable SSH access. Now, the SSH in this case is not direct from you to the switch. The SSH session is proxied through XIQ. So when you enable SSH for a specific time frame, it will communicate with the IQ agent on the switch and set up an SSH session between XIQ, the switch, and provide you with a location and a port number you can SSH to. That IP and port will be located up on our XIQ servers. You'll connect there, and it will proxy down to your switch. This way, you can access the direct switch console from anywhere in the world when you need to. Excuse me. Now, to apply this configuration, you need to assign this network policy we had previously created to the device. Now, this can be done in a few different ways. The first way is to assign the policy directly from the Manage Device view by clicking Assign Policy. The other option is to select a device or multiple devices if you have them and need to apply it, going up to our Actions tab, selecting Assign Network Policy, and then choosing the policy in question. Now, before the configuration can be applied, you need to make sure that in that policy, you have the appropriate device template for the switch model you're trying to configure. Now that the policy has been applied, we'll see that there's a red flag saying that we have a difference in configuration running on the device from what XIQ expects to be there. By clicking on the flag, you can open up Configuration View. You can see an audit saying we're missing some settings from these policies. We can go over to the Delta side and actually see all the switch commands that will be pushed down to the switch. So in this case, we're seeing our LDP configuration, our port level configuration that is not currently on the switch that we need to push down. Now, to actually push the configuration down, we select a device, go to Update Devices, and then we have a few options here. The first is to push the configuration down. We also have the option, if you'd like, to upgrade the operating system on the switch. So this will be the firmware upgrade. When selected, XIQ will reach out to the switch. The switch will download the firmware from XIQ and trigger that upgrade process. Once you select the option you want, click Perform Update. You'll see a progress bar running on XIQ. And once complete, we can then go look at the switch and actually see the configuration that has been pushed down to the switch. Now you can use a show run, or in EXOS, you can also do a show CLI journal. You note here, we have the user Hive manager that's been pushed all the configuration down that we had previously seen on the Delta configuration. So at this point, the switch has been on board. It's available in our XIQ, and we're ready to actually continue service clients on that switch. So at this point, I want to see if there are any questions that have come up, and we'll go from there. Ken?
Sure, Alex. Again, another busy afternoon here on Channel 4. So a couple of questions have come up. Obviously, people, already own EXOS switches out there. And the first question that came up was, can I onboard my current production switches into XIQ?
You most certainly can. So in this case, we're looking at one of our XIQs that we have here at Extreme. In this XIQ, we have both XIQ managed and unmanaged switches. But in all cases, we're able to monitor the current status. So for example, we have some VSPs here, but we don't have a network policy assigned. So we're monitoring the device. We're able to collect all the device statistics that are pulled at a periodic cycle, or in the case of a port up or down, sent instantly up to XIQ, and to see what the switch is doing, how its health is. We can see any connected clients to it, but we're not actually pushing any configuration down. We still have the capability, if we want to actually go in and SSH into the device to directly access the CLI. This is also available for APs or for the EXOS switches.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So basically, nothing's going to happen to the switch. Nothing will get pushed to it from the cloud unless a policy is assigned. On
Correct.
that, you're just basically in monitor only mode, or accessing it remotely mode, right?
Yep.
Cool. Okay. Second question, because they're lined up like cordwood. Can the agent be installed on any older EXOS or VOSS releases without upgrading the switch firmware version?
So there is a minimum version that's required to run the IQ agent. And currently not all devices are supporting XIQ. You would check the release notes to see what is supported and what isn't. But if you're running an appropriate version, you can load, on the EXOS case at least, an XMod with the IQ agent on there. Additionally, if you're running a supported version with an IQ agent, you can upgrade the IQ agent separately from the OS, so it's running the latest IQ, and the cloud will do that for you automatically.
All righty. And this one goes right into the wheelhouse, because we did just recently add this into the demo facility that you're looking at now. But can XIQ manage an EXOS stack?
It most certainly can. So if you notice right here, we have our EDUC EXOS 1 switch. Again, this is a production switch that we're monitoring, not configuring, but it could configure. But we have this little icon here next to the name, and this symbolizes that this is a stack. So if we click the icon, we actually see all the stack members involved. So we get the specific MAC addresses or serial numbers of the switches. When we actually drill into the switch itself, we actually see the port states for each individual switch. So we can see stack member 1 and stack member 2. In this case, our switch is heavily populated with an uplink. So you see the uplink ports available on port 32 for both. And we have the ability to go look at all the statistics, the system information, clients, and events.
Okay. And here's a clarification question. Somebody asked, does all the switching data need to be sent to the cloud?
So no switching data is sent to the cloud. Everything that goes to the switch is kept local for user traffic. What is sent to the cloud is statistics and monitoring information. So the same type of information you get from a on-premise management platform. So a port trap that will get sent up to the cloud through the IQ agent. Port statistics, ingress and egress statistics, that will be sent up, but at no point is the actual data packet sent to the cloud.
Okay, fantastic. Let me just check the time here, see how we're doing. We have plenty of time left. So one of the other questions that came up when we look here is like, can I onboard more than one switch at a time, or do I have to do them individually?
Well, if you really like to do copy and paste, you can do them one by one. Or you can onboard multiple devices at the same time. So from that quick add device, we can apply multiple serial numbers. So if you're doing 5 or 6 switches, you can paste the serial numbers in with the common between them to add them in all at once. Again, I mentioned earlier, you can click the different models of devices that you're adding. You also have the option here, if you want us to actually apply that network policy that we created right from the adding device. Additionally, if you have them available in a CSV, you have the option to upload the entire CSV of all the serial numbers. So if you have 100 switches or 500 switches, you want to upload all at once, select the OS type, import the CSV. We provide a sample format for you so you can make sure it's formatted correctly. And all those devices will get added for you in one go. Saves you a lot of copy and paste.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming that you can just download that format file, fill in the switches using that format, and then just upload it and go, right?
Yep.
Okay. Another question here. Hold on, please. Can the switches be managed completely from XIQ?
So the answer to that is yes. With some limitation at this point. Current capability available through network policy is what we've been demonstrating so far. However, that supplemental CLI and the SSH gives you complete configuration capability of the switch. So if something is not available in the network template, you can use that supplemental CLI to add any command that's supported on the switch. And the nice part about the cloud is we're constantly rolling out updates, so the capability is just going to grow over time. So if we actually go look here, for example, we'll use our X465 template we have here, supplemental CLI. I can add any commands I want here. If you want to do a specific port setting, if you want to do some router settings, some advanced routing, some syslogging, anything that's not in the template that you want to add in, you could add these commands here and apply them to all the switches. Or, as I mentioned earlier, if you have a corner switch, one that's over in the executive's office that you want to, increase the QoS separate from everyone else, you could have a device template applied directly to that switch, or something CLI applied directly to that switch for unique settings and overrides for it. And if that's not enough, you can SSH directly to the switch and just configure what you'd like.
Okay. I know this is going to come up a lot, so I figure, I'll ask it now. For existing customers who use XMC, because I know that's a lot of people who are listening to this right now, can my switches be managed by both XMC and XIQ?
So managed by both, I would not recommend at the moment. Currently, XMC and XIQ are managing the devices on their independently. What happens in the future, that may differ. But for today, you can monitor a device in XIQ and manage by XMC, or monitor an XMC and manage in XIQ. But only one of them should be pushing configuration down to the switch so they don't step on each other. Now, in this case, we mentioned earlier that we have multiple switches in here that are running some with the network policy, some without. Specifically, we're looking at, say, our EDUC BEB4. This is a Fabric Connect device. We're not configuring it from XIQ at the moment, but we are monitoring the state. However, if I go over to our XMC, we see that same device here in XMC, EDC BEB4, EDC BEB5. We also have the EXOS switches down here that we had up in the cloud. We also should be interested to have the stack that we were managing. So the device can live in both systems at the same time. But you want to make sure you're only managing by one today. Tomorrow, that may change.
Absolutely. I know everything gets developed as we go along. And Faisha, because you did show that particular switch, we've been kind of concentrating on EXOS switches, and somebody asked if you could show a VSP switch. Oh, and I know certainly. You just clicked on one, so you might as well.
So VSP switches are also fun to show because they're much more colorful than EXOS, because by default, the ports come up in a admin down state. So we're able to show here that the red ports are actually admin down. If the port is admin up but no link, it's just that blank port with no color. Well, link up shows green. So in this case, this is one of our newer VSP 4900s. We get all the statistics information. We get the port states, as well as some statistics from the actual ports. Again, you go look at the clients, diagnostic, events, alarms, configure. The other thing that's interesting about the cloud is, data retention. We'll hold the whole data in the cloud for a long period. In this particular, wrong button. In this particular XIQ, we're able to hold up to 90 days. However, on our newer XIQs or ones that have had enabled for, we have unlimited data retention available. So 90 days is not enough for you. We can go all the way up to unlimited. So you can keep it for all time up on the cloud. Unless you scroll back anywhere in that timeline to see the state of the switch, statistics information, how it was performing 90 days ago, or how it was performing an hour ago. And all from an easy to scrub pane up here at the top.
All right, very good. Now, I guess I should probably go over the whole, config template thing, because they did have a question. Do I need to configure each switch individually?
So a config template is really useful, or a network policy is really useful for configuring the same thing multiple times. So say in your edge switches, in your network, you may have many edge switches, all with common services. Even if they're carrying multiple switch models, you can apply that common configuration to all those switches at the same time. So, in this case, we've got the 465 template that we've created. Any device that's associated to this network template with a 465 model number will get this configuration. We also have the ability to build groups within a network template if you need to have slightly different. So you can say these serial numbers are in this config group, while these serial numbers are in that config group, even though they're the same model number, to customize a little bit. But whether this is one switch you're configuring, or one switch you're configuring, or 100, 200, all done from a click of a button from the cloud. You group select them right from the managed device, assign that policy, and then update them all from here.
All righty then. Another question that came up, if you could give like a more detailed explanation of exactly how switches get up to the cloud.
So to get a switch up to the cloud, the first step is to make sure you're running appropriate firmware. Most of our switches are being shipped out, have this code. If you have an older switch that's been on a shelf for a year or two, you might have to do a firmware upgrade. That being said, once you connect the switch to the network with no configuration, it will reach out and get a DHCP address. The DHCP will have what IP it is, default gateway, and local search domain, and DNS information. The next thing it's going to do is do a DNS lookup for our server up in XIQ. It's a common server. It'll reach out to that server, say, hey, I'm here. Here's my serial number. Where do I go? Now, if you've registered the device into your XIQ instance, that first contact server will say, you belong over here. And it'll tell the switch to actually go connect to your particular XIQ instance and register. Now, this communication is done over HTTPS to specific IPs. And these are available in our documentation. So if you want to lock down your firewall rule, say, your switch can only go to XYZ, that information is available on our website. So you can go say, my switch, I'm going to our redirector saying, where I can find its home. And then it's going over to this data center where my XIQ is. I only want to allow it to go there. You can log it down to that level. From the SSH point of view, your SSH sessions will be redirected through your XIQ, so you can still get down to the switch, but you'll never be able to access it directly from the internet. It'll all be proxied. That hopefully cover the question in enough detail?
I think it probably does. I think that probably takes care of like most of the questions that have come in thus far. I'm just kind of checking and see if anything else has come in. And we're looking pretty good thus far. So, Alex, are there any closing statements that you want to make about how the switches are going to work in the future with the cloud configuration and XIQ before we close it out for the day?
So I'll leave what's coming down the road to some of our other sessions out there, but the cloud is constantly evolving. Features are getting added regularly. Being on the cloud, we're able to update the feature set very, very regularly. New stuff is being added. Even in the past few months, the capability of what's been on there for the switches and what devices are supported has been expanding on almost a weekly basis, it seems. If you're missing something, check in a month, it may be there. They are constantly pushing the updates. Up at the top, you can look at the communications tab and it will have, you can access the release notes. You can see, any news updates coming and to see what's being pushed out and new features coming out. And again, if there's something you need that's not there, you have the supplemental CLI and direct SSH to configure that on your device. But in the meantime, you have that single point of management, that cloud view you can access anywhere in the world, and the statistical recording that's there for that extended time from either 9 days or unlimited for however long you need. So you always have that data there in a safe place. Even if your site goes offline, the data is safe up in the cloud. And anything else crop up in the short term? Or?
Well, I'm gonna add in my own question right now because basically I want to, and I think people need to see it because I'm looking right at it. I noticed that you have a 5520 up in the cloud, which is relatively new, and you might want to show that to people. I know they're probably learning about it in other sessions, so you might as well show it to them.
So the 5520 is our next generation switch that's coming out. At this point, it's still very early to show. No, but we have it in the cloud. This particular switch has the ability to run both EXOS and VOSS, and you can select this right from the cloud interface. So when the switch first checks in, I don't have the ability to show you on this particular instance right now, but it will give you the option. You can say, actually, I might. Let's see.
I think you actually do.
I just might on this one. You can actually say if it's running EXOS and you want it to be running VOSS, right there. One click of a button, and you can change that from an EXOS device to a VOSS device. And then if you have network policy, we have the 5520 EXOS flavor, but you can also have the 5520 VOSS flavor, each with their own configuration, their own device templates. And this is rolling out, new stuff coming down the pipe regularly. And that particular one's kind of cool.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're probably coming up against it in a couple of minutes. So you might want to go to the final slide, give everybody the download of what we're doing, and call it a day.
So if you had more questions that we weren't able to answer, or you didn't have time to enter, and just something coming up with down the road, I highly recommend you visit us on the hub. All of our questions and Q&A from this demo session and stuff that came in answered by our helpers in the background here will be posted to the hub. And if you have more questions, you can ask them there, and our experts will be able to answer them for you. So, and at that, thank you for your time, and I believe that covers what we have to show right now.